Chapter 6. How Plants Grow. Take a stroll in your school garden. You will find different kinds of plants around. Some plants have flowers while others do not. Flowers are the most attractive part of a plant. They are colorful and have fragrance. Have you ever wondered why flowers are so beautiful? What is the role of a flower? Do you know that flowers turn into fruits? Fruits usually have seeds inside them. A gardener sows seeds in the soil, from which new plants grow. A flower has two important roles. A. To attract insects that help in pollination. B. To form seeds that will grow into new plants. Are there plants without seeds? How those plants grow? Reproduction in plants is done in two ways. A. Through seeds or spores. B. Through roots, stems or leaves. Sexual reproduction in plants. Flower. A flower has the following parts. Petals. Petals help attract insects. These are usually colorful and showy. Sepals. These are green leaf-like structures at the base of a flower. They cover and protect the bud of a flower. Carpel and stamen. These are the male and female parts of a flower. They are directly involved in seed formation. Carpel is the female part of a flower. It has three parts: a sticky stigma on which the pollen falls, a long tube called style that connects the stigma to the ovary. The ovary contains ovules which turn into seeds. Stamen is the male part of a flower. It has two parts. Filament, which is a stick-like structure that holds up the anthers. Anthers which have a yellow powder are called pollen grains. How seeds are formed. You must have seen insects feeding on the nectar of flowers. The stigma releases a sweet substance called nectar. When an insect sits on a flower to suck up nectar, it transfers pollen stuck to its body and legs to the stigma. When insects move to the stigma of a similar flower, the pollen grains fall on the stigma. The transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower is called pollination. Insects are the main agents of pollination as they help to carry pollens from the anther to the stigma. After some time, when pollen grains have reached the stigma, they break open and produce a tube called pollen tube. The pollen tube slowly grows through the style to reach the ovary. Here, the contents of the tube mix with the ovules forming seeds. This is called fertilization. The ovary changes. It swells up and turns into a fruit. The newly formed seeds are inside the fruits. If the stigma of a flower does not receive pollen, the flower becomes useless as it cannot reproduce. It shrivels and dies. Structure of a seed. A seed is made up of three main parts: a baby plant or embryo, cotyledons where food is stored, and a cover called seed coat. The embryo or baby plant. It is the baby plant that turns into a seedling or young plant when it gets the right conditions for growth. The cotyledons. These are also known as seed leaves. They store food for the growing embryo till it puts out new leaves. The seed coat. It is a covering around the cotyledons that protects the embryo. Seed germination. Germination is the change of a seed into a seedling under suitable conditions. A seed needs warmth, water, and air in order to germinate. When these three things are present in the right amount, the seed will swell and the embryo will begin to grow. Moisture and warmth soften the seed coat, making it easier for the growing embryo to break out of the seed. First, the beginning of the root system, the radicle will push out of the seed. Then, the tiny stem, the plumule with buds for the first leaves will appear. During germination, the embryo gets its energy from stored food. The stem breaks through the surface of the soil, and the leaves open up to the sun and roots take in water. Now, it can carry out photosynthesis to prepare its own food. Dispersal of seeds. Seeds need to be scattered to new places so that they may have better chances of germination and survival. The scattering of seeds away from their parent plant is called seed dispersal. Nature has its own ways of dispersal of seeds from the parent plants to other places. Dispersal by wind. Some seeds such as those of cotton and dandelion have hair that help them float in air. They are carried by wind. Dispersal by water. The seeds of plants which grow in water or near it are dispersed by water. Lotus seeds are embedded in a cup-shaped, spongy fruit, which floats in water. Water helps in the dispersal of seeds. Seeds of some plants such as those of coconut have a fibrous covering, which helps them float in water. Dispersal by animals and humans. Humans and animals eat fruits and throw the seeds away. These grow into new plants. Some seeds have special features that help in their dispersal by animals. Some plants produce burrs that have hooks at the end of thorns. The burrs stick to animal fur and can be scattered far and wide as the animal moves from place to place. Some seeds such as cherry are passed out undigested in the droppings of birds. Dispersal by explosion. Fruits of some plants like pea, poppy and bean burst open when they are ripe and scatter seeds in all directions. This mechanism of dispersal is called explosion. Vegetative propagation. Birth of new plants from their parts other than seeds is known as vegetative propagation. Plants such as potato and ginger grow from underground stems. Potato has buds called eyes. Each bud, eye, is capable of growing into a new plant. Plants such as carrot, sweet potato, and turnip can grow into new plants from their roots. The leaves of certain plants, such as those of bryophyllum, produce buds on their margins. These buds grow into new plants when the leaves are placed in the moist soil. Some plants can be produced by artificial vegetative propagation. For example, rose and sugarcane can be grown by stem cuttings. Growing crops. The practice of growing plants on a large scale, for food or other purposes, is called agriculture. Plants that are grown in large quantities to get food and other useful things are called crops. Crops are mainly of three types: food crops, wheat, paddy, maize, millet, grams, etc. All producing crops, sunflower, mustard, etc., and fiber crops, cotton and jute. Agricultural practices. Tilling the soil is first plowed or made loose with a plow. Plowing helps the roots of crops to easily penetrate into the soil. Applying fertilizers. Manures and fertilizers are added to the soil to add nutrients that crops would need to give a good yield. Sowing seeds. Seeds are sown by hand or seed drill. Irrigate. Irrigation is the process by which sufficient quantity of water is supplied to the crop. Water is very important for the growth of plants. Crop protection. When the seeds germinate and seedlings come out, they need to be protected from pests, diseases and weeds. Weeds are pulled out by hand or with a trowel, hoe or harrow. Chemicals are also used for destroying weeds and insects. Harvesting. When the crops are mature, they are harvested. The process of cutting and collecting the mature crop is called harvesting. Plants from other countries. In India, we have an abundance of flora or natural vegetation. But are you aware that quite a few of them are exotic? An exotic plant is that which does not belong to the land, but has been introduced there by human activity either deliberately or accidentally. It is said that the Portuguese, in 15th century, introduced chili from South America. Chile is a South American country and Chile has been named after Chile. Portuguese were also credited for the introduction of fruits like guava, sapota, chiku, lemons. Later tobacco and potato were introduced. The rhyming potato, tobacco, sapota points to the same origin. Many exotic trees as well as grasses, like Mexican grass, were imported from Africa and Americas. Insectivorous plants. Some flowering plants can capture and digest insects. Venus flytrap, sundew plant and pitcher plant are some such examples. When an insect comes in contact, the leaf blade of a Venus flytrap plant folds. See the pictures. The leaf snap shuts, trapping the insects and gradually digests them. Pitcher plants have pitcher traps at the tips of their leaves to trap the insects. The hairs of a sundew plant are in the form of stalked glands. They produce digestive juices that decompose the trapped prey. Word bank. Petals, showy and colorful part of flower that helps attract insects. Sepals, green leaf-like structures at the base of a flower that cover and protect the bud of a flower. Stamen, the male part of a flower. Carpel, the female part of a flower. Pollination, the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower. Germination, the change of a seed into a seedling under suitable conditions. Agriculture, the practice of growing plants on a large scale for food or other purposes. Vegetative propagation, birth of new plants from plant parts other than seeds. In a nutshell, plants reproduce through seeds or through vegetative means. Flowers are the reproductive parts of a plant. Flowers turn into fruits. Fruits have seeds inside them. Pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of a flower. Pollination leads to seed formation. Seeds germinate under suitable conditions, availability of the right amount of air, water and warmth. Dispersal of seeds is important for the survival of plants. Seeds are dispersed by wind, water animals, and explosion.